the level of war crimes taking place in Gaza each and every minute. I can't keep up with it. I'm trying to document it, and like you've been doing, the world needs to see what's happening. These little girls, little boys that are being slaughtered left and right. They're trying to hide it, but the world needs to see what's really happening. And I think a lot of people are beginning to wake up. And that's kind of my next question is, when it comes to the American population, when it comes to the global population, even like Israelis, I think it's 80% of Jewish Israelis now blame Netanyahu for this invasion of Israel. The majority of Americans don't support sending military, like unlimited military aid and weapons and all this stuff to Israel. It really seems like we're seeing a tidal shift in the sentiment of an otherwise usually really, pro-Israeli crowd in Western countries that are beginning to now take a more affirmative position, like we're seeing with Vladimir Putin, who are saying we need peace, we need a Palestinian state, and we need to respect what we've agreed on at the United Nations Security Council. So what is your take on that, and why do you think this happened? Do you think that Netanyahu felt he was in a risky position, so he may have let this happen, or do you think it was really a sleuthy operation by Hamas and probably the Iranians that caught the Israelis off their guard?
There's that old saying, and I could be getting this wrong, but pride goeth before the fall. Israel is a nation that's overwhelmed with arrogance, hubris, pride. It's literally the definition of a narcissist nation. I mean, again, I don't want to come off as anti-Semitic. I think I made it clear that I used to love Israel, and I still like Israel. There's still a place in my heart for Israel, and there always will be. But you can't sit there and say that we are anointed by God. We are the chosen by God. Therefore, we get to do anything we want. I'm not picking on your faith. If that's what you believe, that's what you believe. But guess what? No one else believes it, and we're not going to sit here and kowtow to your faith if it requires us to allow you to impose tyranny on other human beings. All men are created equal. If you're an American, reread these documents that are the founding documents of our nation, who we are, what we believe. All men are created equal. That means Jews are the equals of Muslims. Not if you talk to the Israelis, the modern day Israelis. Again, I have to differentiate. It was 1995, I think, when Yitzhak Rabin was assassinated, 1995, November. And, that Israel was a different Israel than exists today. I traveled to Israel quite a bit, and I went back in 2009. And I have to tell you, the Israel that existed in 2009 was a nation living in fear, fear of the Muslims. They had built a wall, a literal wall, a ghetto wall, keeping the Palestinians out. That didn't exist when I was there before. They built a ghetto wall. It didn't make the Israelis safer. Every Israeli was quivering, shaking in fear of the fact that the world hated them. But they hated them with cause. Netanyahu is the man who killed Yitzhak Rabin. He didn't pull the trigger, but he was the opposition leader, and he was encouraging people to call Yitzhak Rabin a Nazi. He was encouraging these radical Jewish rabbis to put a certain edict. It's like the Jewish equivalent of a fatwa, a religious edict that says this man has betrayed Judaism. He can be killed. And he was killed by a right-wing, rabid Israeli Orthodox Jew who said, the rabbi told me to do it. God told me to do it. What replaced him was Benjamin Netanyahu, who's a lying sack of manure from day one. This is a man, look, I spent from 1994 to 1998 working with Israeli intelligence about Iraqi weapons of mass destruction. When I started, Iraq was the number one threat to Israel. That's how they assessed it. By the time I finished, Iraq was number 6 and falling. Why? Because Israel had bought into the reality that not only was Iraq disarmed of weapons of mass destruction, and people say, why did you work with Israel, Scott? That's the reason why. You see, by working with Israel, I was able to get them to go, oh, maybe he's disarmed. Bingo, we win. Because if I didn't work with them, they would never believe he's disarmed. And I just told you, the United States will veto everything in the United Nations if Israel disagrees. We were getting Israel on the side of disarmament, and they had bought into it. We also got Israel to, there's another big one, to view Saddam Hussein as a rational actor. You know, they were trying to kill him at the end of the Gulf War. They actually had assassination teams going in there. They did a dress rehearsal for a Sayat Matkal raid. That's their Delta Force. They were going to go in and kill Saddam at a funeral of his uncle. And they were rehearsing it, and had the rehearsal gone well, they would have done it. They would have killed Saddam. The rehearsal went bad. They fired live ammunition when it shouldn't have been. Guys died, got exposed. They canceled it, but now they were going, do we continue to try to kill him? And they called in a team of guys, and they said, let's reevaluate this. And they had a guy assume the role of Saddam and educate himself as if he were Saddam. And then we talked to people, and they came out and they said, Saddam's a rational actor. That if we actually disarm Iraq and then are willing to work with Iraq to build a better Middle East, we'll never be friends with Iraq, but he won't be an existential threat. We can move beyond Iraq with Saddam still at the helm. That's official Israeli policy. Netanyahu came in and flipped the whole script because that was inconvenient. He didn't like that. He's Mr. Security, and to be Mr. Security, you have to have a threat. So he revived the Saddam threat. And Benjamin Netanyahu, for all those people who are resentful about the WMD lies and the blood of American soldiers on the hands of George W. Bush, Dick Cheney, stuff, Benjamin Netanyahu's hands are soaked in American blood because he's the guy that got them convinced. He's the guy that went and testified before Congress in 2002, knowing it's a lie. How do you know he knows it's a lie, Scott? Because I worked with Israeli intelligence from 1994 to 1998, and I know that they know what the truth was. But Benjamin Netanyahu testifies before the Congress and says, there's absolute certainty they have a bomb, 100%, there's no doubt. And Congress went, yeah, we're going to invade. Boom, they didn't have a bomb. Everything Benjamin Netanyahu said is a lie. Everything he ever says is a lie. He's a liar. He's been lying. Guys, guess who built Hamas? Here's a good one for you. Israel. Now, Benjamin Netanyahu didn't do it because it was Israel backed Hamas back in the 1980s. But when Hamas was going to make that transition to being a terrorist group to being a governing agency, Benjamin Netanyahu is the one who did it. He said, if you want to split up the Palestinians, make sure lots of money gets sent to Hamas. Make sure we get Hamas elected. And they worked, and they got Hamas elected. And then the civil war happened, and Hamas won the civil war in Gaza. They got beat in the West Bank, but now Gaza becomes a Hamas super camp, courtesy of Benjamin Netanyahu. Everything that's happened since then is because of Benjamin Netanyahu. And now he comes back. He's one of the most corrupt people that ever walked the face of the earth. And he's facing corruption charges that would put him in jail for the rest of his life. So what does he do? He gets reelected as prime minister, and then he says, we're going to rewrite basic law. Israel doesn't have a constitution. Can't, because it's a Jewish homeland. And according to the, I could be getting this wrong, but the Torah, or Israel can't exist until the Messiah returns and the temple is rebuilt. So to call yourself the state of Israel today, there's a lot of Orthodox Jews out there saying that's heresy. Can't be a state of Israel. Therefore, there can't be a constitution. But there is basic law. And the basic laws of Israel provide for the same sort of separation of state that exists in the United States. You have the parliament, the Knesset, you have the executive, you have the president's the chief of state, but the prime minister's the most powerful part of the executive. And then you have the judiciary, which is supposed to be separate and independent from there. What Benjamin Netanyahu has done is taken advantage of the majority in the Likud to rewrite basic law so that his party and he personally controls the judiciary, that he can stack the deck with the judges so that he never gets prosecuted. And anybody who says we want to prosecute him, they impeach him. That's the whole thing. So if any judge went, yeah, well, I think I'm going to, all the judges right now, they're going after Donald Trump. Well, it's the prosecutors going to put overseeing those cases. If this was Israel, they'd all be impeached. Mm-hmm. Ain't that beautiful? Ain't that wonderful? No, it isn't, ladies and gentlemen. It's not wonderful. The judiciary must be separate but equal. That's how it works. Netanyahu's done. Israel went bananas. Hundreds of thousands of people in the streets. Prior to the Hamas action, if you'd Googled Israel, it was all about how the Israeli people were rejecting Netanyahu, saying, you're out, we're done with you. Thousands of reservists said, we will never serve in the military, not under Benjamin Netanyahu. And then October 17th comes. Now, you asked the question, did Netanyahu orchestrate this? Well, we know he orchestrated because he created Hamas. He empowered Hamas. But no, I think what happened on October 17th. Go ahead. Do you have a question?
Quick question. Maybe you could address also. You've brought up the Hamas, the Israeli creation of Hamas a few times. And maybe you could also, if I don't know the full history, but also am aware that Hamas was utilized against the Assad government to fight in some capacity with the moderate rebels, but they've been brought back under the axes of resistance fold with the Iranians over the past several years. Maybe you could touch, because I don't know that history.
Yeah, when Assad, when the whole Syrian civil unrest broke out in 2011, 2012, there's Palestinian refugee camps outside of Damascus, and inside those Palestinian refugee camps, there's a strong Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad presence. They are Sunni Arabs, and the Al-Qaeda element, this is pre-ISIS, but even ISIS when they came in are Sunni as well. The Islamists that were being empowered by Saudi Arabia, which is a Sunni country, pouring money in, Qatar, a Sunni country, it's sort of a Sunni revolt against an Alawite leader. Bashar al-Assad is an Alawite that's an offshoot of the Shia faith. The Shia don't necessarily recognize it as a genuine religion, but they've sort of, when this whole thing started, all the clerics got together in Iran and went, Alawites, okay, you're okay. Humdy, you guys are all right. So we don't view you as heretics anymore. We can fight with you now. But, the bottom line is this was a religious thing.
Okay.
But, the Syrian government didn't collapse. They resisted. And then Hezbollah came in and fought alongside the Syrian government. Then the Iranians came in. Then the Russians came in. And everybody sort of went to Hamas and the Palestinian, Islamic Jihad and said, hey, knock it off. You see, you need us to survive, and we choose him over you. So if you want to continue to do your thing, you got to be on Team Bashar. And they changed their tune, and there was a coalescing of the minds, so to speak. And so they dropped out of the anti-Assad front, assumed a more neutral stance in Syria, and got back to the business of hating Israel above all else.
So I'm sorry I interrupted you. You were about to answer the question as to whether or not Netanyahu kind of preferred this invasion to take place in Israel with Hamas, or if it was a complete sleuth operation he wasn't even aware of. I'm not a conspiracy kind of guy. I think there's a lot of people out there frustrated with me because they're like, Scott, you told the truth about WMD. Yeah, but it wasn't a conspiracy. I was the chief weapons inspector. I knew the truth, so it was easier for me to tell the truth. I don't have to have a conspiracy about anything. But they're like, what about 9/11? I'm like, yeah, I'm not buying into that. Well, you're horrible. You're a horrible human being. You don't buy into the 9/11 conspiracy. No, I don't. I mean, hate me if you want to, but I don't. I'm not a conspiracy guy. I actually like to look at the facts and see where the facts take me. I'm a big Occam's razor kind of guy. The simplest answer is probably the right answer because I've dealt with governments enough. I've dealt with complex problems. And first of all, conspiracies require a lot of competence. They really do, especially the really detailed conspiracies. People have to be pretty darn good to pull this off. Governments aren't very good. They're full of incompetence. I've seen nothing but incompetence. I've seen lies. I've seen just absolute failure of character. That's what I believe in. Not that I believe in it, but I mean, when I look at this thing, I'm more likely to believe that a government is incompetent and fell asleep at the wheel than I am to believe that in the midst of the greatest political crisis an individual's ever had, where every day he's faced with being thrown out of office or going to jail, that Benjamin Netanyahu is capable of going home, putting on his tinfoil hat, going, all right, now, how do we conspire with Hamas to make this happen? No. Netanyahu is an old man under a lot of political pressure, and what happened is his eye got off the ball. He's dealing with a fundamentally divided nation. They're getting ready to pull a stunt in the West Bank dealing with settlers that's going to disrupt everything. At the same time, he's trying to salvage himself through the Abrams Accord and the reconciliation of relations with Saudi Arabia. They're looking to Saudi Arabia, the normalization of relations. They see a big future in the Gulf Arab states where they've already opened up several embassies. That's the direction they're going. And they say, okay, what's going to happen on the West Bank could screw this all up, so we need to keep it tampered down. We're going to withdraw troops from Gaza because it's quiet in Gaza. And he turned around to his guys and said, hey, what's going on with Gaza, Hamas? And they went,
look, we bribed them. What do you mean we bribed them? We gave them 20,000 work permits. And the 2 million people got 20,000 work permits, and now they're getting some shekels, baby, and they're happy. And we're working with Hamas about governing. And if we get them to govern and not do terrorism, we don't have to worry about it. They said, but what about, we got a bunch of Scott Ritter type individuals down there on the border who do intelligence for a business. And they're reporting back that Hamas is actually doing dry rehearsals of an assault on the kibbutz. Don't worry about it. Domestic with political consumption. They're just firing guns so the people in Gaza say, they're still there. What about the paraglider exercises that we saw? Don't worry about it. Not a big deal. What about the chatter and everything? No. Hamas isn't going to do it because they want to have, they want the shekels, baby. We bought them off with the 20,000 thing. It's called the conception. And the conception in the Netanyahu government was that Hamas was so committed to peace and stability and governance because they assumed that Hamas was the same as the Palestinian Authority, which Israel bought off. Those other Palestinians that live on the West Bank in their huge mansions and they fly around first class and they live in 5-star hotels and they take all the money that comes in to help the Palestinian people and they enrich themselves. These are the scum of the earth. President Abbas and company. Fatah stopped being a resistance movement a long time ago. Now they're just a bunch of fat, overweight men who carry around AK-47s that their muscles can't even carry anymore, and they take money. That's what the Palestinian Authority is, and that's what the PLO has become. Hamas ain't that. These are real men. I'm not saying they're good men, but these are real men. You push them, there's steel there. There's muscle there. They're the resistance. And the Israelis convinced themselves that they could buy Hamas off like they bought the PLO off. It didn't work that way. And on October 17th, the 50th anniversary of the Yom Kippur War, the last time Israel had a conception, Egypt will never go across the Suez Canal because they know the consequences would be too harsh. Well, they went across the Suez Canal, caught you by surprise, killed a couple thousand Israelis. That's what happened on October 17th. Hamas executed one of the most well-conceived, well-rehearsed military operations in modern history. They deceived one of the greatest intelligence institutions in the world, the Israeli intelligence. They did this undetected, or if it was detected, they managed to convince the Israelis because the Hamas is smart. They know about the conception. So what they tell the Israelis is, wait a minute, what do the Israelis want to hear? Because they had a drone over the combat village the other day. I think they saw us attacking the kibbutz. They might know we're coming. No, don't worry about it. Hey, Ali, you got a meeting with your Israeli counterpart? Yeah. Tell them you're desperate to get another 10,000 work permits. Tell them we really need it, that we're hurting here, that in order for us to move forward in this governance thing, we need more. And the Israelis are going, see, we told you. They bought into it. Didn't want to see no here, evil here soon. And as a result, Hamas pulled off. But here's the scary part. The mission that Hamas pulled off on October 17th, that doesn't mean that October 18th they stopped planning. They've been doing this for 2 years, planning this. What they did was designed to enrage Israel. There's a reason why they did what they did. I'm not supporting it. I'm not condoning it. I condemn it. But there's a reason why. It was to get Israel so mad, so angry, that two things would happen. One, when Hamas pulled back into the Gaza area, Israel will blow the living hell out of it, excuse my language, level the place, which they're doing right now. And Hamas knew that the world is going to rise up. Rise up. And it's happening right now. Everything that's happening around the world is part of the Hamas plan. It doesn't mean that it shouldn't happen. It should happen. People should be enraged. Israel's overreacting. To give you an example of overreacting, remember that hospital they blew up the other night? Yes. All right. Killed a couple hundred people. The whole world's blown up about it. You know what they did today? They sent a message to that hospital, they being the Israelis, saying, get out. We're going to level the place. There's 13,000 people in that hospital. Israel says, if you don't get out on the time that we tell you, it's on you. We're going to kill everybody. Israel believes they can do that. So Hamas set Israel up for this. That's how stupid Netanyahu is. He doesn't understand that he's literally walking into the trap. There's that old saying that if the enemy, if everything's going according to plan, it's probably an ambush. Yeah. And so they're doing it. The second thing is Hamas is prepared for this. They have easily 80 to 90 days worth of supplies underground. They know what a J dam does, how deep it penetrates. They've gone 15 meters deeper. J dams can't penetrate the tunnels. These tunnels are everywhere. They're full of ammunition, rockets, fuel, food, extra fighters. These guys are living in dormitories down there. What's happening above ground is hell on earth. You know who doesn't care about the Palestinian people, just like the Israelis? Hamas. They're willing to sacrifice them as well. They are literally sacrificial lambs designed to get, they're there to be killed by the Israelis to enrage the world and to slow down the Israeli assault, to complicate the Israeli assault. The Israelis are going to come into Gaza and they're going to get slaughtered because Hamas is waiting for them. Hamas has planned this battle. This will not go well for Israel. I'm not saying that they can't win, but, you know, there's a thing called a Pyrrhic victory. If you can go in, if they go in there and they end up defeating the Hamas military wing, understand that Hamas is an ideology. It's not just people. You're going to kill people, but because you've blown up the Palestinians, you've made the Hamas ideology immortal. It will never go away. There will always be a Hamas resistance. Israel doesn't understand that. They're going in there, but the price they're going to pay, they're going to lose thousands of soldiers dead. Thousands. They're also going to be responsible for the deaths of hundreds of hostages. That'll be on Israel. That'll be on Israel. And no matter what happens, Israel's going to come out of this entire tragic situation weaker than they entered it.